What is one thing that you wish as a podcast host your audience knew? I asked this question on Threads a few weeks ago, and the response was really interesting. The response came back with a lot of, when I say reach out to me, I really do mean it. Reviews and follows are really, really helpful. But one thing that kept coming up consistently was, I want to hear from them. Feedback is important. Feedback is helpful. And we all know podcast listeners are notorious for scoping things out and never actually sending an email or never actually replying or engaging. This can be really frustrating as a podcast host. So let's talk through some ways that you can turn your listeners into followers, subscribers on other platforms to ensure that you are able to interact with them. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Successful Podcasting Unlocked. I am your host, Alicia Galati. I'm the founder of Galati Media, a full-service podcast management agency where we help business owners launch and maintain lead-generating podcasts. Today's question is, how can I turn my listeners into followers or subscribers on other platforms? This is something that we as podcasters definitely can struggle with, and that is being able to move people from just stalkery listeners or passive listeners into engaged followers. Today, we're going to talk through some strategies that have worked, things that we've seen work, as well as some additional tips and tricks that you can maybe use. The first thing that you're going to want to do is really get clear on why. Why do you want your listeners to move from just listening into something else? Yes, it's a great strategy, but why do you want to move them? Are you looking to increase your email subscribers? Are you looking to drive new traffic to your website? Are you looking to book consultations? Are you wanting to grow your followers on a certain social media platform? Why is it that you want your listeners to go from passive listening into connecting with you further? This goes back to our typical 4 goals that we see podcasters have, and that is that they're usually looking for conversions, impact, engagement, or growth. Those are usually the goals that we see people really focusing on as podcasters, and more specifically as business podcasters. So when you're looking at your listeners and you're trying to think, okay, I want them moving into other platforms, but why? So here's something for you guys to consider. As listeners of this podcast, my why I would want you to move from just here to connecting with me is that I want you to give me your podcasting questions. That is helpful for me. It allows me to engage with you. It allows me to share my expertise, and it gives me content for future episodes. That is my why. That is why I want you to engage with me. Moving on to number 2, and that is where. So the why and the where. Why do you want them to move? And where do you want them to move? When you're thinking about growing your email subscribers, okay, I need them to move to a specific place. I want them to either sign up for my newsletter. Well, why should they sign up for your newsletter? Give them some incentive. Give them something of value. What is included in your newsletters? Most of us are trying to get out of our inbox. So we don't want to be in our inbox so much. So how can you really show that what you're giving them is of value in exchange for their time and their effort and their email address? That is really important. Do you want to grow your TikTok? Then you need to be moving your listeners to that platform and tell them what they'll get by following you over there. It's important that you're explaining where the quality is, because if you only show value in your podcast, your listeners aren't going to care to move elsewhere. You have to show them why they should actually want to move. And if you can't show that, then they're just going to stay where they're getting the quality. The third one is how. How are you going to turn those listeners into subscribers, followers, DMers, engagers? The way to do that is to clearly articulate where you want them to go next. This is so important. I was listening to an episode recently and someone was asking about the quality of the podcast. They were in a collective that I'm in, and they were asking, can anybody listen to my podcast and give me any tips or tricks or tell me if where I can do better? And so as a podcast strategist, I try not to overdump ideas on people. And so I focused on two specific things for her. The second of those was that I really wanted her to consider where her audience should go to connect with her. In her show notes, she had places where people could go to connect with her. She talked about where she likes to hang out, but nowhere in the episode did she talk about that. She didn't even have an outro at the end that shared where people could go. It is so important that we are doing that as podcasters, that we're telling our audience where to go next. You want your audience to buy something, tell them to buy it. This is the only way to really move your listeners from where they are passively engaging with your content to DMing you, to copying you on things, to tagging you in things, to subscribing to your email list. So that is how you're going to do it. That's the first one of how you're going to do it. But then once we whittle down, all right, we've clarified, we're going to send them places. You have to share where the value is. Like I said before, if you're only giving value within the podcast episode and your emails are not great or your emails are super spammy, but you never talk about your business over in the podcast, then that can feel like it's disconnected. And so it's really important that you're giving your audience a clear understanding of what they can expect from those places. I have a podcasting friend who she always tells people, go to my Instagram. That's where I like to hang out. You'll see funny memes. You'll see me dancing or lip syncing to quirky audio. You'll see my love of coffee. You'll see my love of cats and fun graphic t-shirts. These are all ways that she is able to express to her audience what they can expect when they move over there. That is what you need to do as a podcast host. Not just say, come follow me over there. It's what are they going to expect? And that is something I try to do with my podcast. When I tell you, go book a strategy session, let's work through this, let's process it, let's talk about it. Or I'll say, submit your question to be answered on a future episode. It's clear what you're getting and it's clear where I want you to go. That is what you need to be doing for your audience, giving them clear direction and be very consistent with that clear direction. Your call to action should not change every episode. It should be very similar, and you can maybe add in just one, please. Just one extra call to action based on the content within that episode. So if you have a freebie based on that episode, direct people to it. If you have a strategy session that can help with what's discussed, send them to it. And then let them know what else they need to be doing. That is your consistent, every time, please send me a message here or follow me here. That is going to help move your listeners from where they are passively listening into engaged followers. So this is my challenge to you. In your next podcast episode, I want you to give your audience a call to action. I want you to tell them where you want them to go after they listen to the episode. Let me know how that goes for you. Let me know if you do it. I would love to hear from you. You can go to Successful Podcasting Unlocked to submit your questions for future episodes, or you can go to Instagram. That's where I love to hang out. Alicia.Galati. You can find me over there. Happy to answer any questions you have, as well as cheer you on in your podcasting journey. Until next time, happy podcasting.